Hello YouTube vintage stereo collectors. You're looking at an exceptionally vintage piece of stereo gear. This is a Lafayette LA214. It's a Japanese build. It's a single-ended stereo amplifier, all tube. Tube complement is a 6CA4 rectifier tube, two 12AX7s in the preamp, and two 6BQ5s for the final. And it's a single tube for each channel in the output, so it's single-ended, it's not push-pull. This one has some really neat things that you only see in amps from around 1960 to 65, that vintage. First of all, it has the nice feet, the mid-century feet that some of my mid-century furniture has. Sits up a little bit higher, all steel cabinet, and the color scheme is kind of interesting too. You have the brass background, the white and black stenciling, and this thing, I got it, it was very dirty, very scratched. The faceplate looked like it would never come back, but I just worked on it, slowly cleaning it because you don't want to damage it. And I used Lysol wipes to get it. Had the nicotine grunge on it. It came up beautifully. Soaked the knobs just in regular dish soap. They came out really nice. The cover, I cleaned it up. These were originally painted in lacquer, and I repainted it in lacquer. A lot of scratches and marks on it. I think the original paint was pretty thin. So did it in the same type of gold. And it's kind of has a nice look to it. It's different. Like under here I have a 1970 Sony. It's a completely different look. The knobs especially, they're machined aluminum. They don't have inserts. They're real metal knobs. But this one, the restoration, it almost was too much. I had to put a lot of hours in it. Had a lot of little quirks. I don't know where to start. First of all, just a standard. It did work, but it sounded terrible. I ended up recapped the entire thing, put a terminal strip underneath. It had a multi-section can cap. There's lots of room underneath on it, so put new caps on the terminal strip. The other, a lot of ceramic caps in this, and the sound was just not that great. Very bright, very brittle. So I used polystyrene caps, mainly orange drops, a few mica caps on the tone controls. And during the restoration, it had a very annoying little problem. And that was, there was an occasional time where you'd move the amp a certain way, and these split controls are for left and right channel, both volume, treble, and bass, and the right channel would go full bass. And I cleaned out the pot, resoldered everything, put new resistors and caps, and then rebuilt the tone control matrix basically. And then I was working on it. I got a flashlight out and I'm looking very carefully, bending wires, seeing if it's a short. And I noticed a little ball of solder inside the control. And getting it out without disassembling the control, I used compressed air and gravity and got it out. That was the problem. That had been in there before, because I noticed it when I first fired it up. Anyway, that really made things work well. And it had the original Toshiba tubes in it. A lot of hours on them. They were a little bit on the weak side. I had some new old stock, so two new old stock GE 12AX7s and GE, the Great Britain Mullard Blackburn tubes for the outputs. And the result is a vintage system with really nice smooth sound. And I'm feeding it with the Heathkit AJ12 tuner, same vintage that's in some of my other videos. It takes a while to get used to the split controls, but it's kind of neat. You can really fine tune the balance. Another problem with these older Lafayettes, other different ones like Fillmore's, these switches were terrible. These slider switches, very noisy. And it had three of them in the speaker setup. a speaker's phone switch, which was sometimes intermittent. Even after taking the switch apart, cleaning it, tightening the spring up, it was still intermittent. And then two others on the back. One was an 816 ohm switch, and the other was a speaker phasing, so it took the right channel and reversed the phase. So in the speaker setup, you had three switches between the output transformer and the actual output, which is not a great idea because each switch has a little bit of resistance, a little bit of loss, a place for noise. So basically, it is now wired directly to the phone's jack and then to the output, the speaker outputs, which are set at 8 ohms, which 90% of the speakers you use are going to be 8 ohms. So that eliminated a lot of noise. And then this rumble filter, which was just a simple resistor capacitor network, it actually would introduce noise. You know, you would just tap the amp, there'd be a little bit coming from here, and that's after cleaning it. I even tried a different switch, another new old stock one I had. I just thought, what do you need that for? I mean, here's your rumble filter right here. Oh, there's a little bit of rumble. Back the bass off. It does exactly the same thing. So anyway, I find a lot of these of this vintage I worked on, you're better off to bypass those switches, leave them in for cosmetics, and you get a very reliable, nice, directly connected amp. So basically, you're going from the input jack to the phono tuner aux switch. You have a mode stereo reverse mono switch, and through the two 12A7s and the tone control. And it's an active tone control network. So you have one 12AX7 as a buffer, and then they feed the 6 BQ5s. So nice, clean, straight signal path. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening.